I want you to imagine a newsroom inside a living room. A familiar face, a steep personal journey, and a streaming life poured into a single narrative. Today, we're not just talking about Amanda Peet's cancer journey or her family dynamics. We're unpacking the texture of how she handles vulnerability on camera, in print, and with her oldest friends. If you're a creator or a viewer who craves honest storytelling, this one hits different. Let me break it down, and I'll pepper in why it matters, what it signals about celebrity storytelling today, and where the threads converge for anyone facing a similar crossroads. Let's start with the core pivot point, turning a private crisis into a public, cathartic story. Amanda didn't rush to share the news. She says she had to get myself together before including them. That phrase reveals a lot about the balancing act at the center of personal storytelling. What many people don't realize is the craft behind choosing when to reveal, and to whom. In my view, the timing isn't just about sparing her kids or avoiding sensationalism. It's about preserving agency. By waiting, she controls the narrative, framing the moment on her own terms rather than letting a media clock dictate the pace. This matters because it highlights a broader trend. Public figures increasingly curate emotional transparency, not as a constant stream but as a measured courtship of truth. It's not about silence. It's about strategic openness that respects a family's privacy while offering a beacon for others. Next, the medical context sits as a quiet mathematical equation. Hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative breast cancer, with a treatment path of lumpectomy and radiation rather than more aggressive surgery. What makes this really interesting is how the specifics shape perception. People often conflate breast cancer with doom, but Amanda's description reframes it as a treatable condition with a clear roadmap. From my perspective, sharing these details does two things. It demystifies the disease for a broad audience and humanizes the medical journey, showing that news cycles sometimes collide with real, grounded decisions about health, prognosis, and daily life. A detail I find fascinating is the way medical categories become storytelling devices. They anchor the narrative in lived reality, not fear, and they invite viewers to think about risk, intervention, and the imperfect biology that complicates every healing story. Then there's the family frame. 2 daughters, a son, and a spouse who's a high-profile partner in a demanding field. The statement that the kids have been great, but that she needed to be honest with herself first signals a universal truth. Kids absorb uncertainty through adult behavior more than through explicit talk. What makes this really interesting is how it shifts responsibility in the audience's eyes. It isn't about adult stoicism. It's about modeling leadership in fear, showing children a process. Acknowledge, assess, act, and involve them when the timing is right. In my opinion, that's a blueprint for parents who want to keep kids informed without turning the household into a rumor mill. It also reflects a broader trend. Viewers reward caregivers who demonstrate emotional intelligence, not just resilience. Contextualizing the cultural ripple. Amanda wrote for The New Yorker, a move that elevates personal narrative into literary space. The act of translating a private fight into an essay with literary framing is a signal about how celebrity narratives are evolving. What this really suggests is that personal health stories are crossing from tabloids into prestige outlets, where nuance, risk, and introspection are valued. If you take a step back and think about it, this shift increases the legitimacy of vulnerable storytelling, giving audiences permission to hear not just the triumphs but the tremors behind them. One thing that immediately stands out is the collaboration with Sarah Paulson, who lends an audio version of the essay. Best friends turning intimate experiences into shared art adds a layer of communal healing. Watchers aren't just consuming a story, they're participating in a constellation of support. Let's talk about the social ripple, the human side of fame where friendship and public life intersect. The public support from a longtime mentor and partner in crime, Sarah Paulson, shows how the celebrity ecosystem can function as a safety net rather than a spectacle. My take: this is what trust looks like in the era of megaphone social media. It's not a momentary endorsement. It's a reinforcing chorus that says, you're not alone in this, and your closest circle can amplify your voice without diluting it. What makes this really interesting is how the friendship itself becomes a narrative asset. An extension of Amanda's story that widens the lens from individual struggle to communal resilience. What does this imply for creators and audiences? For creators, Amanda's approach demonstrates that personal hardship can be narrated with precision, care, and literary seriousness, without sacrificing intimacy. For audiences, it sets a new bar for what authentic looks like. Not unfiltered chaos, but purposeful, ethically mindful storytelling. The bigger trend here is the fusion of personal memoir with public platform, and the recognition that health stories can and should be handled with the same craft as fiction or journalism. A detail I find fascinating is how the medium, a New Yorker essay, plus media appearances and social posts, creates a multi-format, layered experience. Written depth, spoken warmth, and public validation, all feeding the viewer's sense of connection and hope. If we zoom out, a deeper question emerges. In a media environment that prizes sensationalism, how do we sustain humane storytelling when the topic is pain? Amanda Peet's narrative suggests that it's possible to blend candor with care, to honor the seriousness of cancer while keeping focus on family, treatment pathways, and everyday life. It's not about turning suffering into headlines, but about turning it into shared knowledge and support networks. In my opinion, this approach could become a template for how celebrities talk about health going forward. Explain the science simply, acknowledge fear honestly, and invite the audience to walk the path with you rather than observe from a distance. Closing thought. Stories like Amanda's aren't just about one person's fight. They sketch a map for navigating uncertainty in public life, how to tell the truth while protecting the people you love, and how to transform private vulnerability into collective empathy. So, what are your thoughts on how public figures should handle personal health journeys? Do you prefer raw, unfiltered honesty, or a carefully curated version that still respects family boundaries? Let me know in the comments, and if you found a part of this breakdown ringing true, share it with someone who might need a little more courage to open up about their own story.